So this is not just unveiling of a book, but it's the stories behind it. And I mean, as we go along, we'll talk about both mountains, the physical mountain and one is the internal mountains. I don't want to give much ability to that now. So so the way we do it is I'll introduce the guests, the members here, Ranjit and then we do book reading, and then of course we have them speak, and then chat, and then of course we do open to the audience. So to introduce first Ranjit Kulkarni, and so Ranjit is an engineer and an MBA, right? He's an engineer from NIT's Bangalore and then an MBA from IIM. So he worked for a long time in corporates and finally he started writing now. So he's written around 125 short stories. He's published 5 books on short stories, and this is the 6th one. It's called Climbing the Mountain. So basically, he got the idea, the inspiration from the texts which he has gone along. Yeah, so he's done quite a bit of trekking, which we will come to. So we hear the stories come alive. Right? So a lot of us do treks, a lot of us don't do treks. So this is about how to climb your internal mountain. So we would love to hear from him. We do that in the fireside chat as to what was the inspiration, what were the stories behind it, how did he do it. So that's about Ranjit. So he has 2 interesting characters that he's written, Jignesh and Jignesh Bhai Swami. So it's like, not logging a party exactly. So it's like, Jignesh are comedy. So there's a book, he's written The Good, the Bad, and the Silly, right? So Jignesh Bhai said, Jignesh Bhai is a cool guy. I mean, you leave him alone, he'll do his own stuff, he'll have his own food, and must रहेगा, right? Like me, I'm that kind of a guy. So I can relate to Jignesh Bhai more. Swami is a guy who has a self-doubt about everything. ये होगा, नहीं होगा. Not like us, like जो होगा देखा जाएगा, चलो आगे. कल की बात कल रहेगी, that kind of a guy. I love those characters, but those are not there. So we'll go along and we'll in the fireside chat and again we talk about this. I don't know why it's called fireside, but it's not fireside, it's chat. And because the ceiling fan anyway. So then we have Deva. I know most of you all know him because he's been on Everest on India. So he's been a trekker all along. So during the course we'll understand as to why he started mountaineering, what about climbing, why the interest he developed. And by the way, when he submitted, he used all those tools, whatever that is called. So he will briefly tell us about those, and maybe we can ask him as to what it is and how is it used when you go to the mountain, when you climb a mountain. So what we do is we first welcome them with something called as a khata. So what happens is in Nepal, whenever you go, you are given this is called a khata. Right? So Nepal, when you go, this is basically for purity and compassion. So those guys are very serious about mountains, right? So whenever we have gone on treks, so the first thing the Gurkhas, Sherpas, sorry. So first thing the Sherpas tell you before you climb the mountain is you stand and you have to pray to the mountain. Okay? I mean this is very serious business. So first is you have to stand and pray that you need to allow us to come and climb it. So conquering is not the word. Hemant always says you cannot conquer a mountain anytime. You can just climb and come back. So and then when you come back, again you pray to the mountain that thank you for letting us climb that mountain, right? So this is a kata which denotes purity and compassion. So Priyanka, you can come. Thanks for the team. So now we unveil the book. So Hemant, would you just be on this? So next what we do is we do a book reading section by Ranjit, where they pick up our story and read it for us. Book reading. Yeah. So only request is don't read the stories which I'm going to ask you questions on. Okay, you're not going to read stories.
He's read everything. All the stories.
Right, I have written the book finished like a few months ago. Okay, so before I start the reading, thank you very much. Is okay? Thank you very much, all of you, for coming for the launch program. And thanks, Rajesh, for a great introduction to all of us. So, the book that I started reading, I started writing around 1.5 years back, in June of last year. Uh, the idea for that came after I attended one of Hemant's sessions on his FSW. It was a very long session, 2 hours. He went into the details of what exactly he went through and things like that. Part of the inspiration that Mount Everest summit is not just about the physical preparation for it, but there's a lot of uh, mental, psychological preparation that goes into it, apart from the connection. It's an expensive expedition. So, and then there were lots of stories around people, what they went through and things like that. I have been a trekker myself for the last few years. Uh, so that's where the idea started. So what I'll do is I'll do a brief a reading of the prologue of this book, so that you get an idea of what the book is about, what kind of characters are in this. This is not a trekking guide kind of book. This is essentially fiction, inspired by characters that many of them I have met, many of them I have read about. Includes not just trekkers, but also the people who are of great support during the trek. People who run the tents, people who the Sherpas, as we said, they play a big role, and so many such characters that we bring on. I'll just read a prologue and then the title story, Climbing a Mountain. Climbing a Mountain is the name of one of the stories in this collection. I'll read some excerpts from that story. On 22nd May 2024, a dear friend of mine climbed to the top of the mountain. It was no ordinary mountain top. It was the tallest mountain in the world. Sagar Mata, Chomulungma, the mother goddess of the sky, most in the modern world know it as Mount Everest. It is inexplicable why people would take pains to get to a place where even in clear summer skies, the temperature is several degrees below zero, where the air is thin enough to make human life impossible beyond a few minutes, where the heights instill fear at every step, where death stares at you fear at every step, and where accidents there are more than enough reasons. These are more than enough reasons to push away an ordinary person. But then these are the ordinary people, the ones who not only attempt but complete this extraordinary feat of endurance, a coming together of mind, body, and spirit in a manner that very few other feats attempted by humans might require. I have been on smaller and much less challenging treks in the Himalayas. They were nowhere being as tough as climbing Everest. But I, as well as the trekkers accompanying me, face the same challenge of climbing a mountain, albeit a much smaller one. It is the same coming together of body, mind, and soul that it takes, even if it's in its own smaller way. The stories in this collection are inspired by this onerous feat of climbing a mountain, the arduous journey, completing a trek. The endeavor taken by these diverse people on a trek is not any less demanding.
They are also climbing a mountain, and very often it is not just a physical mountain that they are climbing. Much like the tip of the iceberg, there are other hidden unseen mountains that these not so ordinary trekkers are climbing unknown to others. Everyone has their mountains to climb. Like Maurice Herzog in his legendary book Annapurna, the first conquest of an 8,000-meter peak said, at the end of his book he says, there are other Annapurnas in the lives of men. It is these characters and their very own mountains that I have tried to explore in this collection. Stories driven by their circumstances, their situations, and their conflicts, many of which don't reside in the mountain or the trek itself, but in their real world, way down at the lower altitude. You will meet some of these characters and the mountains that they are climbing in this collection of stories. Here's a few examples. Rohan has chosen the road not taken by following his passion instead of profit in the hills of Uttarakhand. A happy-go-lucky couple, Anchal and Arav, go together on a trek to Kashmir and find how different they are while realizing that love alone is not enough for the mountain of life. A group of middle-aged women decide to blow everyone away by having their 30-year school reunion on a trek to Nepal. When Samir is blown away by the simple things that he learns when he gets away from his family business in search of freedom and individuality, go to the mountains. A simple guide in Nepal is overwhelmed when his team surprises him on his birthday. But as a complex monk in Ladakh learns a lot from a determined mother on a trek. A middle-aged Anjaneya is driven by a search for God, even while his anger doesn't desert him. Whereas an elderly Kimberly practices detachment on a trek in a foreign country, trying to find herself in the present while still getting inspired from her past. Young Akanksha is climbing over a mountain of an ever-elusive confidence till she hits her own summit. Whereas the all-knowing and argumentative Aryan will always meet such people on treks. He treks with so much confidence, only to eat humble pie at the end, where he has to depend on his collaborators. Young Pranay, frustrated with his job, goes to Mamta and finds a new beginning, as does the disconsolate Viman when he meets Kachin in Chopta, where at the crossroads of life. The last and the title story, Climbing a Mountain, is about Sandeep, who finds unexpected spiritual inspiration from his late mother, while caught in seemingly unsurmountable challenges on his attempt to summit Everest. He is, in a way, climbing the highest of both mountains, external and internal. It is these and similar characters that we will meet in the stories in this collection. Many of them are inspired by people I have met on my own treks. Some of them are inspired by people I have read and heard about. But bear in mind that if some of you have read with me, if you find yourself identifying someone in the stories, it is only the inspiration that you have identified. Beyond that, the stories are entirely fictional, all a making of my own mind. I hope I have filled these pages with enough interesting mountain climbs, trekking adventures, and people with stories to entertain and enlighten you. I hope you join the characters while they are trying to do what my friend did, climb their own big mountain. I'm just reading a few excerpts from the title story, Climbing a Mountain. Sandeep had a few good hours of waiting in camp food. Enough time off in the dead zone. It was not yet midnight, but he was ready to take off for the final summit push from South Pole. We thought about what the next few hours had in store. They were going to be the toughest few hours of his life. Would he be able to survive them? He couldn't help but think of all the years of his life that had led up to this moment. He remembered his mother. Was she somewhere nearby? He wondered. at 26,000 plus feet, close to 8,000 plus meters in altitude. Heaven couldn't be too far, he headed, with an inward smile, looking upwards. Dorje Sherpa approached Sandeep and told him that the Ugandan climber in the tent next to him had died, and that they would also have to climb over the body of another British climber who had died near the balcony yesterday. The balcony was between South Pole and the final summit, below the South Summit. Hope I'm right. South Pole, the balcony, South Summit, Hillary Step, and the final summit. Sandeep had revised it so many times. All he wanted to do now was to make it count and climb to the summit. Sandeep knew that facing death was a real possibility in this summit expedition. Yet he found it tough when he was forced to contend with the actual fact of the death of two fellow climbers. He had spent the past few weeks from base camp eating, talking, and climbing with him. He had shared goodbye with the Ugandan climber. He was gone now. This kind of shock was hard to manage mentally. Even then he felt that he was prepared to face death if it came to him. Dorje Sherpa said that it was now time to make the night climb and push for the summit. This was their only chance. It was a window of opportunity that the weather, the mountains, and nature itself had afforded them. If not now, they had to turn back. The season would get over soon. Sandeep was obstinate, determined, focused on the climb coming up, the final stretch. There was no other choice. He ensured that his oxygen mask and cylinder were in place with the regulators, did a last check on his shoes, crampons, harness, and took the first step. As the crow flies, the distance to the summit was only about a couple of kilometers, maybe a bit more. At best, about 3 or 4 kilometers of climbing. Sandeep had done many marathons in his life, but for the next few hours, they didn't matter. Every step he now took felt like a marathon. In the darkness of the night, with a partial moon in the sky, Sandeep could still sense the depth of the valleys on the mountainside. Each step had to be efficient. There was no scope for slipping or stumbling. Each breath had to use oxygen fully. Each clipping had to be perfect. Sandeep's body was freezing and he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. Dorje Sherpa urged him to keep moving after increasing the oxygen flow. But because he could not feel his fingers fully, he had to pass on fixing the rope and flipping himself many a time. At that moment, the thought struck Sandeep that he could actually feel everything. It was dark, cold, and he was on a steep, snowy slope of a mountain that had seen many like him. The fear that he would lose his fingers or toes or maybe simply due to sheer bad luck entered his consciousness like an unwanted guest.
कुठे करू मोठं
Riding to the beginning,
मॅक्झिमम आहे
steps forward and waiting for taking a
मॅक्झिमम
like George Sharpa had told him, but it wasn't easy. He started thinking of all the things that could go wrong on that night. There were 100 things that could kill you here, he thought.
म्यूट स्पीकर कॉन्टॅक्ट सपोर्ट
Why did he do this? That's the question that had no answer.
म्यूट कशाला
Thank you. I mean, this is a very intense story. Last one's special. So now I request Iman to say a few words.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Ranjit. I'm not going to repeat Rajesh. Not ask me to talk about Everest because this is not about my business. And last year we had a good talk session here. But having said that, I think today's event is about this book and about Ranjit. Of course, it's connected very much with my society. So I'm going to start with talking about 2008. It's around 13 odd years, more than that, 18 odd years. Okay. I met Ranjit for the first time. I was working with him, and some of our colleagues and friends are also here. Because RP answered. Yeah. So here I meet this guy. He was studying analytics in the place to working in global marketing hub. and very soft-spoken, nice kind of a guy, very unlike me, totally opposite to what I am, right? I would be restless doing things, all that. So is our behavior, and said like complete opposite to him. But something stuck, and that friendship which started at sort of India till now, and so that I think if I look back since 2008, every major decisions I've taken in life, he's one of the first ones to do. Be it when I started Rustic Club, right, almost 10 years ago, I met him in a cafe, and cafe it was. And I said, hey, I'm doing this, all those things. Of course, we spent a lot of time about deliberating, do this, that, all those things, and advised me on a whole lot of things as well. Later on, I remember during pandemic, right, when the world shut down, so did our business. Temporarily, our business paused because we are into travel and tourism, and nobody was traveling. So we decided, Rajesh and I decided that hey, let's use this opportunity and let's drive to the car all across India, all India road trip, as we called it. And again, I met him, he came home, we spoke about it, and he joined our trip, right? He was there, the entire Gujarat, the entire Northeast, he was there. So he's been there throughout. And last year, early part of 2024, right? And of course, I had decided before that, 1 year before that, okay, I will attempt climbing Mount Everest. I hadn't told anyone actually about this. Only very few people knew that, maybe a handful of one or two people. And with them, the only person I told was Ranjit. And I remember his first reaction was, "Pagal hai kya?" Still remember that. कुछ और कर ये क्या कर रहा है? Of course, there's some things which he added in Hindi which I'm censoring. Yeah, since for the sake of the audience. But I mean, he was, of course, he was concerned about my well-being and all that. And he tried to dissuade me from, taking that endeavor, like right till the end, actually. Having said that, of course, I decided to go and I didn't listen to anyone and I went. And throughout, it's a 2 month long expedition, the Everest, right? And throughout that time, he was in touch with me, he was in touch with Rajesh, who kept a track of what I'm doing and how am I doing, all those things. And I remember, of course, I came to know after I came back that since he was closely following my expedition, I think when I submitted, of course, my Sherpa radio down to the base camp and our expedition leader put it on Instagram and social media, and that's how they came to know. So, Rajesh, in his joy or whatever you will call it, told the world, oh, he's done it, all that. Like, hero. And he told him also, like, he was like, really cautious, like, hey, yaar, I'm not right? Let's not jump the gun. Yeah. And of course, and that particular thing is so important to climbers, right? It's not about summiting to the top, it's about coming back safely. And as trekkers, many of in the group are trekkers, they are aware of this. There's Arvind here who's trekked Kashmir, all of us, for this Priya and others. So it's very important that the goal is not to reach the top, have the glory. It's about coming back. Even though if you're not summiting, taking that call at that moment that okay, weather conditions are not good, or you're tired, you're exhausted, you can't you make it to the top, but you will not come back. Taking those decisions is about coming back safely. So I think, having said that, I've, to be frank with you, I've read just a few stories here, not the entire book. But I'm reading as you speak, and what he has done is the characters in the stories. Of course, when I came back, he said that, and he was of course very thrilled that I was safe and done this. And he's been one of my biggest fans, supporters, everything. And it just I think came naturally to him that he got inspired, which and he decided to pen down this book based on my experiences, his own experiences. So the characters and the stories which I've read, and he discussed a few before also. They can, I mean, of course, these are about not about the physical act of climbing or trekking. I think, as Morris also said, there are annapunas in lives of men. Similarly, the Everest within lives of men and women. Right? Everyone has a mountain to climb, Everest to climb, and it need not be the physical Sagarmatha, the mountain, the Everest. It could be something that's totally different. It could be professionally, it could be personally, and that is so important. And when I started my final summit push from South Pole, Camp 4 at 7,950 meters to be exact, that was I was trying to, conquer. Conquer the Everest within, but actually climb Everest, the mountain. So I think it's very important because it's, as I said, it's not a physical act. I had a 10 to 12 hours climb up to the summit in a freezing minus 20, minus 30, minus 48 degrees. And with every labored step you stop, breathe for 10 times, then start again. And that's the thing, you keep on doing that. And that's when, I remember at each step, Everest, each step I need to conquer within myself to each step and come back. So I think, thank you Ranjit for actually penning down this book. I hope, it's already a bestseller by the way. I think and on Amazon, day before yesterday, right? Yeah, all the pre-orders, everything have been booked. So it will be a great read and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. So we have to chat. But just one thing before that, those are the things which he had carried, which helped him to go to the Everest. So I can tell you the easiest one, which is the flag, right? A lot of. So can you tell me, many of you all must have put it in your cars as well, right? The first flag. So what is the significance of it?
Home money, value.
Huh?
Home money, value.
Correct. But why is the flag there?
The wind carries the money.
Yes. So you're 100% right. So the belief is that when the wind blows, the prayer goes all across. So that is why you have these hawk, right? Yeah. So maybe you can also.
So I just quickly take you through. I'll just quickly take you through some of the equipment which is used. Actually, eyesight was not used in Everest. It's just for effect. Other things it was used, but the Everest. Everest has become slightly quite commercialized, and a lot of logistics are planned in advance. When I say logistics, one of the things they do is there's a fixed line go all the way from base camp to the top. There's a team of Sherpa which does that. Right? They go ahead of the climbers and they do that. So, and it makes it easier for us. I mean, it's not that easy, but so this, if you see this is called ascender or jumar. So what you do is you clip it on the rope and it goes up like a ratchet, it locks and it sort of gives you the leverage to go up, right? While climbing, that's how you use on the fixed rope. And a rope is around 60 odd meters, 70 odd meters long. And so there's an anchor, so every time you have to change it. So you reach the anchor, then you change it, you clip to the other one, and keep on going. And you are, this is a harness which I wore, and the same ropes were there. So there is two carabiners, and they were clipped on the rope all the time. So that's basically in case something goes off, it will hold you back. So two, one here, one here, yeah, on the fixed line. While coming down, you use this. This is called a relay device, or you actually call it ATC, right? ATC is actually air traffic control, right? But yeah, that's used for this. So with that, you travel down. So these are the key things. Of course, you wear the helmet. Till camp 3, we were wearing the helmet because it's mainly for rock fall, to protect against rock fall. But the rocks fall at such speed or velocity that sometimes even that does not help. I mean, one of my friends got hit on the shoulder by a rock, and he had to pay back under for 8 days. Luckily, he recovered, to go back and climb. But it's there are many things which can go wrong. Of course, there are other things. This is the shoe which is there, right? Right here. Yeah, so there are 3 layers in the shoes. These are called 8,000 meter shoes. There's another called 7,000 meter shoes. So this has 3 layers. It's supposed to keep you really warm, right? So minus 30, just visualize minus 30 or minus 40, and you are just wearing socks. I mean, which are called special socks, and you wear this. So and these are like what, around 1.5 kg each, and more than a lakh cost. That's why I said about financial. It's like, yeah.
Don't forget them.
Yeah. So yeah, this is just a fraction of that. Of course, there's a down suit, and there are 10 other things, 10, 20 other things which you sort of carry with you. So I just wanted to.
Thank you, Hemant. So now we do the chat session. Okay, so I write the chat, whatever ways I can. So yeah, so Ranjit, he observes characters and he writes about them. In one of the stories, he wrote that there was an old man with a genial face and his name was Rajesh. And I thought forgive you for that. Fiction. Yeah, so that was fun. So I asked questions. We run through the question answer section, so we understand the book more, understand the spirit behind the book more, and then of course we will get back to the audience. So let me. So first thing, Ranjit, you've been a corporate guy, right? For a long time. So what made you start writing stories? So whenever I also, I like being an artist. So there are issues, right? There could be emotional challenges like when you have fear, anxiety, grief, or you want to show the world something, or you will have some existential issues, right? That I want to go all out and do something which I love doing. So what was your push towards writing stories?
Thankfully, I didn't have any existential issues. That's what I would like to be. I don't know, maybe my wife will say something else. But it was more of a planned move. A lot of people who know me for like 15 years, 20 years, they know that for the last 8, 9 years of whatever we call as a working life, makes me feel old, but basically I wanted to do something on my own. And been preparing for that for a long time now. So getting out of corporate was something which is not a surprise to myself. Most of my friends didn't find it surprising. Writing stories was actually a surprise to myself. I settled on that after around a few months of exploring what to do next. And the reason, if you ask me very honestly, why do I write stories? There are only two reasons. One is I love writing. That is the primary reason. Because there's no other, I just asked myself, what is it that I would love to do? And writing was the normal, just answer for that. The second is, I was really impressed, I was really awed with the fact that when you write something, you're essentially creating, especially fiction, you're essentially creating something which is reasonably timeless. If you are careful about it. Of course, you can write fiction about things that are very local, very much in that era, in that period. But essentially, I wanted to create something which, even after 10 years, if somebody chances upon what I've written, it should be that. And the topics that I write about, which is essentially everyday life, I didn't want people to escape from their normal life and read fantasy or magic or that kind of stuff. It's not everybody likes that because a lot of people read because they just like artificial words. But most of my characters are from real words. From people who I have met, I have seen a lot of my corporate experience, many of my friends, people who I meet on treks, most of clients or most of the people who we go on treks are people like us. So I basically write stories also. So that's the reason. I just love writing. Second is basically I wanted to create something which lasts.
What about you? Why do you love being a mountaineer, Ironman athlete, challenging yourself physically all the time? So, how did you get to it?
I think it all started with my first startup way back in 2000. And 2 years later, we exited successfully, sold it off, all those things happened. But after that, I thought I was totally burned out. And I think what, and I then went for a trek. And that trek also happened because I always wanted to visit, go to the Himalayas and go there. Mainly because as a young child, we used to go and visit, hill stations, go to the Himalayas very often as a family. So I think that was there in my mind. I was just, trying to reach out to my childhood in that way. And it gave me immense satisfaction. It made me closer to nature, and it made me feel small, I think insignificant. I think that is very important, and that's what mountains do to you. It makes you humble. You may be in a city thinking to do, but nahi ho, you go there, right? And that's what it's a reality check. So every time, that's why I kept on going back again and again. I'm thinking, oh, nahi ho, वापस आ जाओ. So, and in this process, I really learned the process of learning new things, how each of these work, right? I never enrolled for a mountaineering course. I learned it on the job or on the trip or time. So that's how it happens.
Okay, yeah. So there's one story on this also, right? Where the guy thinks too much of himself and then. So I have a statement that the mountain does not forgive anyone. That's what it says. So, and it doesn't. The guy is super excited and he thinks he knows everything and then how he does it. And he ends with saying that the mountains do not forgive anyone. So one thing, Ranjit, in the stories that comes, sometimes, a lot of times you mentioned about Rocky Balboa's statement, right? And Rocky Balboa's statement. So Sylvester Stallone movie, right? Largely within the So it says that it isn't how hard you hit. It is always how hard you get hit, what you move forward. Right? That's an amazing statement. For a long time, I put it in my office. So Ranjit, one of your stories is inspired by that. So tell us a little about that. Why do you think this line is important?
So that particular story is about a character who decides to basically he goes against his family, he goes against his a lot of people whom he knows, and decides to go to Uttarakhand to follow whatever passion he has. And there's a lot of that story is about the hardships of practical life that he faces while he is in the process of not just uh, discovering, and trekking and finding new mountains to climb, but also uh, trying to figure out how to make a living out of the passion that he has. So that line that you spoke about, Rocky Balboa, I found it very apt for the experience that he's going through. And then he does eventually. The story ends with, as you know, with he finding the way. But a lot of times, and he's a very urban kind of a guy, and his clients are also like that. So I use that line primarily so that it appeals to the reader, because who are all again urban people largely. And he brings that experience and that mindset of someone who can identify with his specters and give them what they want. That's the reason that line kind of resonated a lot. While he's going through the internal struggle, he wants to give the best experience that he wants for his fans.
Even sir, do you have any experience about this? Like, it's not how hard you get it, but how hard you get it. You keep on moving forward.
I think the summit push was like that because on Everest, I mean, a summit push is not from Camp 4 to summit, it starts from base camp. And I remember even before the summit push, I was in Everest to do these rotations, acclimatization rotations. You go up, climb high, then you come down. Sleep on the higher camp, you come down again, you go higher, and then you come down. Basically, acclimatized. So I remember one of these rotations while I was coming down on Kumbu Icefall, I injured my knee. And at that moment, I thought, okay, game over. I'll have to go back to India, base camp and then India. I will not be able to climb. And I was evacuated to Kathmandu. Fortunately, it was not a big injury. With rest, I could recover. And then I could come back. So I think these and many other such on the summit, which hit me again and again. And the whole thing is take it in your stride and get up and keep on moving. I think that's what I did.
Yeah, yes, so climbing a mountain, I think we spoke about this. I think, so these are mountains within yourself. It could be fear, it could be anxiety, it could be relationship issues, it could be existential issues. There are a lot of mountains all of us carry, right? So this book is not about trekking. It's not like how humans usually say. It's about the emotions behind trekking, the people who we met in the treks, and then we are prepared for that. So one of the stories, like since I mentioned about relationship, one of the stories there was, a husband-wife. So he's a hardcore, very technically savvy person, and his wife is a painter on the software side, and they travel together, and they have issues. And then how they get together. So in this age of algorithms and technology and all that, right? I read something beautiful about it in True Life, which are not mine, but I thought after I read his story, I found that would be, very connected with the story. So I'll ask Ranjit to elaborate also on that. So what it says is, we can debug millions of lines of code, but cannot decode a style. Right? I mean, that's how we have become. Algorithms can reproduce rhythm, but not remorse. They can record a heartbeat, but never break one. Right? So that's how we have become. So what was the inspiration behind that particular thing? I think where both are, one is looking on the technical side and one is on the software side. And then they go together on the track and then they come back and they understand each other better. So have you met these kind of people in the tracks or you assumed it? And what was the problem? Basically?
You're talking about a story called Love is Not Enough. So, I would say I have met the inspiration for this story, one can say. There have been on a few breaks that I have done over the last 5, 6 years, 7, 8 years. There have been couples that have mostly younger couples who are recently married or married in the last 5 years, 6 years, who have come together for treks. And one of the things that struck me is that there are very few who both are extremely excited about treks. And that is where actually the one person is the primary person who's driven to trek, and the other person basically comes along because he cannot say no. Now I try to explore this situation. Now, accompanying your wife or husband, whoever is passionate about trekking, just because you don't want to say no, especially in the early part of your marriage, it's a fairly reasonable recipe for disaster. Because trekking is not something where love is enough. That's the reason the name of that story, love is not enough. So what happens with this guy is, as you said, that character, the husband is that character, and that character is extremely driven to build his own tech business. And after marriage, this woman, this girl, realizes that this guy doesn't have any time for me. Every time he talks to me only about his tech business, and I talk about thinking, he doesn't understand. So then I think it's his sister, her sister who recommends that go on a trek, and that's how he goes. So it's about these 4 or 5 days of the trek, and it's kind of a growing up story for them. That's what this genre apparently is called, growing up. So they go through multiple experiences. He obviously goes through injuries. They have to hire a pony, and this girl is like sailing along the trek, and this guy is like every step is like a problem. Why am I here? So that's how that story started, and essentially what I wanted to portray was people come for treks for different reasons, as you said. Some people, now this couple came, one person loved it, the other person came just because you can't say no, for example. There are other reasons. People go for freedom, people want to escape, somebody is going through a bad time at their job, somebody is going through a bad time in their relationship. So I tried to basically capture, this is one example of a newly married couple, which basically wanted to go on this trek and face all these challenges.
Yeah, even you have some experience. Or people came, and I mean, there were different characters who came, and then they met and they, So, absolutely, yeah.
I would love to have such a situation where I can watch it and maybe fuel it a bit more. But that hasn't happened. But the other opposite has happened. Yes, as in 2 unknown people have come, not known to each other, and love story bloomed, and they are married happily, and they are going for another trek. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We're supposed to go in September with a big group, including they were initiating that. We're going to Nepal again, due to the external unrest, we pushed it to next year. But yes, that is happening.
I thought the other way around, you meant that they were happily married before they went on. Coming back.
No, that's basically. So that's basically a trek which is called walking monasteries, right? So that parts of happiness. So it's called paths of happiness, where Buddhist monks lead this trek, and it's like you have to trek in silence. So anyway, that's one of the things which we do, and that's where those characters will get. So one more thing, Ranjit, in one of the stories where you have mentioned women, not a girl, who doesn't have anything and she's in a village, and how she goes on a trek. She meets people whom she has never seen. I mean, she meets people who are the same. And then, first time she has seen that, and how she then realizes it, and how she picks it up, right? And then she becomes something, an inspiration. So, what was, have you met somebody like that? Or?
So actually, there are two such stories about young girls in the collection, and both of those characters are actually seen. The first one that you were talking about is about this girl who runs away from home. Basically, because her parents are going to get her married or something. She's from a village near in the Himalayan foothills. That's the character of her. And she wants to do other things. She wants to go to the city. She wants to do a job and all that kind of stuff. So that is a story about a girl who basically runs out of a village to actually go to a city. I mean, the story starts with that, where she says that I'm going away from my home. She doesn't want to go on a train. Basically, she wants to take a bus that takes her to the city to look for a job and do whatever she wants in her life. But because she has to get out of her village before sunrise, the wrong bus, she boards the wrong bus, and that bus takes her to a trek, to the hills, and then she ends up joining a trek. And there she meets all these urban people, where women are trekking, there are these middle-aged people who have come there, staying on a train, and she just joins them. And she learns, basically, as to what she could potentially do, and that's how that she just joins them, and then the people there are welcoming because these are all 40-year-old people and urban people. So that's one story. The other story, and I've actually met this person because the inspiration was for that was another trek that I had been on, where we had an unexpected girl join us on a trek. I think that will you will remember the experience. Yeah. So we had this unexpected girl, and we were going on a trek. And on that day, when we were getting into the car, we were loading our luggage, and there's a girl sitting there in the last seat, and we said, who's she? She's not part of our group. And I was wondering, why is she here? Why is she part of our group? So that's how the inspiration for that happened. And then the second one about this young girl, actually a porter from Nepal. This was for the Nepal trek. In Nepal, they don't use or they use mules very less actually during trekking. In India, most of your luggage, all your tents, all of it is carried by mules to your next location where you're going to camp overnight for the next day. But in Nepal, there are actually people who lift things and take you along the journey. And I actually saw a young woman who was taking all this, and they carry huge loads. I mean, they carry 50 kgs, 100 kgs. They carry for miles together. I mean, entire trek, days together. And I saw this woman there who was climbing, and she was a porter, and she was dressed like a man. The idea struck me that maybe this is the character who wants to work as a porter but is not being allowed by her family in the Nepali villages to be there. And she's actually a woman who's dressed as a man. And that's where the secret in the hill setting. That story is inspired by actually a real life person who I've seen who is actually a porter woman dressed as a man. That was the inspiration.
So, do you have some these kind of incidents where a person came and the moment when he or she went back, it's completely different person?
it happens all the time actually. And I remember just last month, right, I think I shared with our entire team at Pacific, sent it to our WhatsApp group. One lady, so we do this Paths of Happiness hiking retreat every year. These are monks from Europe, from village France, who lead the trek, and it's a mix of hiking and meditation throughout 7 8 days to do. We started with Nepal last year, or this year, we did it in Europe, tour to Mont Blanc, around Mont Blanc. So for this one, we were a group of 20, there were 4 monks, and this is lady in her late 50s, she had come from Canada. And just a couple of weeks ago, I woke up in the morning and I saw this message from her, thanking me, right? It was Thanksgiving Day in Canada. And it was a long message, and she wrote that I came here for this trek, for this hiking retreat, and it has just changed me completely as a person. It had a huge impact on me, and thanks to you for taking such good care of me and ensuring all the operations, everything was done, very nicely. And thanks to you, I mean, typically we celebrate this Thanksgiving with close friends and family, but while we are doing so, I'm thinking about you and keeping you in my place, thanking you. And I said to you, right, Rajesh, that this is the reason why we do what we do, right? And there are many such, you keep on getting messages. There was, forget a trek, being trips, right? There was a family trip to Arunachal Pradesh, and they were just blown away by the entire this thing. I think that's more than that's we are a travel company. We just ensure that things are done. That's our job. Of course, we take it very seriously that people get the right experience, which we are there till the end, from the beginning till the end. But for many of people who travel, and especially traveling to remote places or trekking for that matter, they are coming out of their comfort zone and doing that. And they are discovering things, people, culture, which they are not used to, let's say in the regular corporate / city life, urban life. I think these, coupled with talking to, let's say, fellow trekkers, be it your porter, be your guide, be a local person, right? It makes a huge impact. And I've seen that many times over. I've seen people, and I know who these are, who come for one trek and say, this is my first trek, I will not buy. Hey, you're packing this so much. I have to spend so much, I will not buy all this. I'm not sure if I'm going to come back again or not. And I know of some people, they've done some 4-5 treks after that. Right? I think it's not, and I'm not talking about that there's a physical challenge they overcome by doing that. That's great. But beyond a certain point, it's not about the physical challenge. It's about the challenges within they encounter by meeting such people and experiencing the hugeness of nature, right? The mountains itself. And I have told this many times in my talks, and a lot of people have asked me that, did you feel anything different when you were on Everest? Yes, I did. I'm a more spiritual person after my Everest than I was before. And during the summit night in the night, and I knew my leg, I had recovered from the injury to come back again. I had lost 2 friends who, and one of my climber friends, she turned back because one of our climber friends went missing. With those in mind, I was, going up. So, and I could sense some energy. It's very personal, but I could actually sense that there is some energy source here, which is there. That presence of unknown. I don't think our science has reached that level. I can't explain it, but it's there. So I think all these things, they have a huge impact on people. and they come back and they show their gratitude or they develop on what they've experienced and all that. So it is a very powerful thing because of all this.
Ranjit, in these stories, if I ask you, which one is closely related to you? I mean, in the sense that once you do these treks, right? I mean, I've done treks, and the best part which I found was the silence, the parts of the village. I found the silence to go. First time I experienced that, I was completely with myself. I'm basically the exterior that I like being alone, so I kind of a lot of things came to my mind, and I found extreme peace when I did that. So, what kind of story resonates with your experience of treks?
I've tried, obviously, I've tried my best where any character in the trek is not inspired by me myself. So, though the voice is obviously mine and the experience is mine, but it is mostly based on people whom I have seen. There are a couple of stories which I could, there's a story about a monk in Ladakh which is very dear to me, which is I just like the nature of that story, just because I mean, it's about a monk who learns a lot from a mother who's trekking with. That is something which I have not experienced. I haven't met either of these two characters. They are completely out of my own imagination, and so I would like to think that that is something which is very close to my heart. There's another story called Dal Bhat Power 24 Hours. Okay. Now, that is actually a slogan that a lot of Nepali porters use it. I mean, they eat this thing called dal bhat all the time when they go to treks. And we are eating all these kind of protein and this and that. We are feeling tired and they are like, what's wrong? I mean, they are all fine and they're planning, they volunteer to take your luggage, you are tired and all of that. And I asked one of the porters, what's the secret? He said, dal bhat power 24 hours. That's the title of one of the stories. And it's actually based on our trekking guide for a movie. These are very simple people. And it's very close to my heart. They are just happy. They obviously are doing it for a living and no doubt that that's their primary livelihood. But this entire approach to the mountains, as you said, they pray before going up the mountains, they seek blessings. The entire care that they take to make sure that people like us who are on treks and who can face various emotions, not just physical loss of stamina or something, or altitude sickness, but even things like when you have to walk on snow and there's a slope on the other side, there's a lot of fear. You can't move for a while, and then they come and kind of take you. So Dal Bhat Power 24 Hours is a story that is very close to my heart because it's based on a character who I have experienced myself in one of my treks to Nepal. And so those are a couple of stories I would say are something which I love writing.
Hemant, what about you? The story, I mean, you may not have read, but that's fine. So, if there is one interesting story which you would like, Ranjit, anytime, what would that be? Any interesting incident which can be made into, you have the sketch, the 4 lines, and then you can build a story in the 10 Ranjit. Okay, maybe you have some experience.
I think he's written almost everything. So, our experiences are not told that. But but trekking, you find different. Actually, since I have also written about many years ago, and so I have some understanding of how to build a character or look for characters, right? So when he started trekking, he's been trekking really with me, with me, Mystic. And I think he came on first trek, and after that, then I started receiving help from another trek, and so many. So he was like very, बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी ये I have to work out ये I will not do. So character has to put in front of him. He will find characters. But that's true. And I came for the next one with me, and he met a track mate and सही बोला था नहीं ऐसे character है आपने तो
By the way, the character he drafted with me also.
Stop talking about the next time you organize a trek, the people here will ask me, Ranjit on that trek, I'm not coming. और भी story लिखेगा. That's an interesting point. Actually, for the last 2-3 treks, it's all been about because I decided to write this book. So I had to go on a trek to get characters.
I think, I'm done with whatever I had to go through. Now, give it to the audience. I mean, you can ask whatever. You should.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you. And I look forward to reading your book. I have a question for both of you. Traditionally, people would go on these long, arduous journeys up into the mountains as pilgrimage, right? So it was like a quest for the transcendent. So do you think your trekking is also maybe a secular form of search for the transcendence in a sense? So how do you look at it? You said, after climbing Mount Everest, you felt it was spiritual. So do you think this urge to go to these distant, very remote, difficult places is, in a sense, a secular version of pilgrimage? It's also a quest for the transcendent, as was in the case of traditional society, where people went to these places in search of the transcendent.
Let me start. I think I would like to start the other way. Ask the question back to the audience. Who do you think is the most, the biggest trekker or the most? If I were to ask you, who do you think who was the best trekker ever in the world? Is there a name?
Mahatma Gandhi. Roddy Walker, Adi
Yes, I was looking for that name actually. So, of course, he went looking for setting up temple, exploring all that. But for us, it's the other way around, right? And it's very personal, it's very individual. Like Rajesh, like the silence. It also gives me a lot of, for me, it's you are able to focus, concentrate. You're close to the nature. It's meditative for me as well. So yes, for me, it's very spiritual in that sense of it. Secular, I mean, not from a religious point of view at all, but yes, it is for me. I don't know how.
So I think as I said, people trek for different reasons. And while in the olden times, pilgrimages and many of them happen to be in the mountains, they were purely from the search for the transcendental kind of, or a devotional attitude. In my view, not everyone treks with that in mind. People trek for different reasons. For the first 1 or 2 treks, most of the time it is things like, I want to test my stamina, or I just want to get physically fit, or I want to get close to nature, or those kind of things. But as you pursue it over a period of time, that's when the enormity of nature and the tougher your trek becomes. This entire the limit that you put on your own body kind of goes away. Because beyond a point, like in Everest, he said, he couldn't feel his fingers beyond the point. He couldn't feel his legs. And that happens even in regular treks. You have to walk for 8 hours, 9 hours every day, and if you're walking about 50,000 feet or something like that, that's when it starts getting a bit, because you have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone, where you start wondering, what is pushing me? There's some additional force that is pushing me. That's where it starts getting transformed. So some of the in this book, for example, some of the stories are very secular, as you call it, or very at a much lower level of motivation. But then some stories are really are at that transcendental level, and especially about the Ladakh monk or some things. So it's a mix of both. It depends on what stage and theme that you're going into.
So it's really, there's a cheeky everyone who asks such questions.
That's on purpose because that's just working hard.
Yes, so we take this to flex all the time. We carry it. It's a bigger snack. Not Everest. Yeah, I like to explore other mountains. So yes, that will continue. But yeah, Everest is
So when you come across your characters, how do you remember the incident for your stories in the future?
So I generally earlier, maybe 3, 4, 5 years back, I used to carry a notepad with me and make a note that I would write something about that character. But now I basically use my phone, and I typically make a I make an instant note on the same day typically, or maybe in a couple of days or in the same week, because you tend to forget otherwise. Because the writing actually happens much later, right? So that's a good question. I actually have a bigger list of unwritten stories and character motivations than written stories. That's kind of my bag of ideas to get into every time I start writing. But yes, I basically make a note of that, and once I come back home, there's kind of a list of ideas that I just add to, and then when I start writing, I expand on the plot and the scenes and all the nuts and bolts of the story.
Yeah, so there's one follow-up question, Ranjit, from my side. I've asked this before. So when I go on a trek or whatever, I go on a travel tour. So recounting that is very easy, right? I can write about the entire trip which I went through. But yours are stories, right? So when I try to write a story, I hit a wall because what's I more right? So how do you build, like he asked a question, right? So how do you ensure that a story comes along? See, I can recount, like we talked about the person, I can recount his character, but how do I build a story around it? So how do you do it?
So this character is only the starting point, as you asked. Many times the actual story ends up being very different from what I had in mind initially. After the character, typically before I go into the nuts and bolts, what is very important for a story is some basic conflict. What is it that the character is fighting? It could be a person, it could be a situation, it could be his own internal issues, fear, greed, whatever. I mean, basically, every character, unless there's a conflict, there's no story. So, the character and the conflict is what I basically start with. Like, for example, there is this young girl whose basic conflict is that she has problems with the family because it does not allow her to kind of do what she wants, and that's the starting point. And then kind of I break it down into how is it going to actually, the way people write screenplay, like basically look at scenes, what's going to be scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, what's actually going to happen. And you can't just stop at character and conflict. Then eventually say that okay, this person ran away from home, then she met this, and then something else happened, and then how are you going to get that conflict to closure? Because unless the conflict closes, what I have seen is that the reader can't quite figure out what the story is about. So that's the general framework that I try to follow. Very often, in fact, I have seen so many times, more than half the stories that I write, the starting point is something, and then actually what ends up in the story is something else. But that's the process.
I'm not asking this question for another chickie. I'd like to know, like, you've given up your corporate job and have you become a full-time writer? And do you think in today's context, when young people are not really into reading books on the same scale as it was when you were young, do you think it's like there would be a demand for the sort of books that you write? I mean, you said it's a bestseller perhaps, but reading habits have changed. So, since you left your corporate job, do you think this will sustain you? Like,
so far it seems to have, but I don't know. Maybe I will retire soon and I don't have any need to. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's not, so when I left my corporate job, so around 5 years back, around COVID, I was more or less prepared for this kind of being an innings of my life where the financial returns don't matter much. Okay, they do matter. Now I know, but I was more or less okay with not being like a Chetan Bhagat or whoever you may say, or not being, I wouldn't say Chetan Bhagat is the right name. Okay, let's say any of these genre fiction writers. I essentially wanted to explore what I wanted to write and then think about demand later. So I think I'm at that point now after having written a few books over the last 4-5 years that now I'm starting to think about, okay, where's the demand going to come from? And one of the good things about writing fiction is that when you have written, it doesn't really matter as far as demand is concerned. I mean, even today we read Shakespeare, we read Mahabharata 3,500 years if you consider it fiction. Even if you don't consider it fiction, people still read it as a work, as a storybook. There are books of 100 Tales of Two Cities, which was written more than 150 years ago. So time doesn't matter. So now I'm starting to think about it. But if you were to ask me for a young guy who wants to become a writer and money is like this has to work in 6 months, think about it before we do. Keep on writing that. Okay.
So, your question, sir, you're talking to a guy who made his writing debut writing about personal finance management.
So my first book was that.
Okay. So I always found that Ranjit and I, there's folks from IBM as well. I think he got his inspiration. He wrote a book. He wrote a book on maybe we should organize an organize. It's a good story. So, talking about this guy, so he was always, he always had a sweet spot. Wasn't a sweet spot between his passion and profession. Always. Zen.
passion for?
Passion and profession. Passion. Profession is not all about passion. It's not basic. Right? So he was always at the sweet spot. And and we discussed in ideal circles that this guy is going to have the best of time. Okay. So I think that's good. I mean, you're prepared, but then you followed your passion, and the passion has come to fruition. Congratulations. And but just one question. Who makes a character Swami?
You have been a very old reader. This book is not about Jignesh Bhai and Swami. They were my original, and in fact, I'm thinking of going back to them after this. Lots of short stories done. Jignesh Bhai Swami, the inspiration for Swami was all around us in India. If you ask me, you would have guessed. So there were so many people who are restless all the time. There are so many people who are worried about many things. And if they don't have anything to worry about, they are worried that there's nothing to worry about. And Swami takes his roots from there. And I just wanted to create two characters who are friends, who just chat with each other over everyday things. And it's largely a set of humorous stories, which has a gentle wisdom at the end, basically. So I'm not going to tell you who it is going to be. So this is really inspired.
I always thought Jignesh Bhai character was based on the guy sitting next to you.
No. some of the stories here are like not
Okay.
he left stock investing around 15 years back.
This is a question for a chicken. So, Ranjit, I know you have been in the short story genre all along, and not a writer in that sense, but what does it take to go to a full-fledged novel? I mean, to have a larger, perhaps context or expanse or timeline or whatever. I'm saying to expand from a short story genre to a full. What does it take? I mean, are you exploring that as your next?
Actually, I don't know whether you know, but I think you might know, and some of the older readers might know that I started with a novel.
Oh, okay.
The Good, the Bad, the Silly, and the Silly. The novel that I wrote first was basically an attempt to take Jignesh Bhai and Swami and expand them into a novel kind of an idea. Jignesh Bhai and Swami were characters that were on my blog for a long time. I've been blogging for almost 15, 17 years. But then when I left my corporate career around 5 years back, my first published work was a novel on Jignesh Bhai. After a point, I realized that I actually enjoy short stories and character-driven short stories much more than that, and I wanted to keep Jignesh Swami primarily on the conversation and small episodic kind of thing. If you were to ask me now again, because that first novel that I wrote, I learned a lot of things from that, and I think one of the most important things for a novel is a bigger canvas in terms of both timeline and character. There cannot be just one conflict like how short story writing is.
Right.
It's not going to be that kind of intensity, cannot be something that you can stretch for 300 pages. There have to be multiple conflicts, multiple characters. Though there will always be a central character, but a lot of supporting cast. And it requires multiple scenes as well. Typically, a novel consists of at least 30 to 40 scenes. And it's a lot of work. It's what I realized is that I probably needed to get better as a writer first before I attempted another novel. That's why I kind of got into short story writing. It's a lot of investment of effort and time also writing. It typically takes around a year. It took me around that time I was a bit fast in writing, so I finished it in 4 or 5 months, but typically 1 year is what it takes. I had a mix and match of multiple characters in that novel, but when I read it now, I feel that they don't gel together. So it's a lot of work. So I would say bigger expanse, something that takes place over a longer period of time. Short stories typically 3-4 scenes, something that happens in a week or 10 days or sometimes just 1 hour. But novel typically can run over 5 years, 10 years. The longer the expanse, the bigger the depth. I don't think I'm going back to writing novels.
Okay.
I'm going to write short fiction.
How about
The short stories or beginner.
How long did it take for you to do this book?
The first draft took me around. So the way this happened was that I started writing in June of last year, and I stopped. I had the first 7 or 8 stories written by around November or December, and then I kind of stopped for 3-4 months because I just wanted it to rest and I read it back after some time. And then I started writing again in March or April and finished it in July or so. And then there's the editing and production, which takes 3 months. I would say 7-8 months of writing and 3-4 months of editing and kind of making it fine. That's what this would be. It's got around 15 stories. Any more questions?
any more guys? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Adal Kulkarni. Can you hear me, please? Yeah. I attended the NCC camp in 1968. Basic course in rock climbing at Uttarakhand. And we were very fortunate because the director of the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering at that time was Norgay Tenzing. And we used to be made to walk about 5 kilometers every day and we were shown documentaries on mountaineering. During one of his lectures, Tenzing told us that when he was at the final summit, and so Hillary was ahead of him, he noticed that Sir Hillary was dropping some peanuts to trail behind him. So when he caught up with him at the summit, he asked him, so why are you dropping those peanuts? So he said, Hillary told him that I wanted the yak also to be fed. So Norgay Tenzing told him, so I think you probably are not aware, but the last base camp from there onwards, the yak are not allowed around here. So the contention was that Norgay Tenzing said at that altitude you can even hallucinate. Did you hallucinate? I mean, you can hide better that you don't think that anything.
No, I did not, but yes, people do that, and I've seen. In fact, there was, I was, I think, 10 meters from the summit. Basically, you cross Hillary's step and you're on the bridge. And to the summit, it will take me, even though you can see it, it will take you 10 15 minutes to reach there. And right below the summit, I see one climber trying to get up. His shepherd is trying to get up. So we said, okay, he will climb up. We just ignored it, just went there. And then we went to summit, took us some 20-25 minutes. We were on the summit taking photos, all that happened. And suddenly the weather changed. It started snowing, storms, and I remember I was taking photos without my gloves on. I don't know why I did that. Completely froze. There was a gust of wind started going. It took me a month to get the sensation back actually, when I came back. So we said, okay, we have to come down because there's a storm which is hitting. And I remember the book Into Thin Air and rest of all that same thing happens there by coming down, many couldn't make it. So we start going down, and then we come down, and in that snow, almost zero visibility. I mean, I can't see, for example, you, it was like that high visibility, and we crossed past that climber, right? And he was crying. He was on the floor on his shepherd's lap. But at that time, we were wondering what was happening there. Of course, we knew that he would not make it. And when I came back to India, I googled that, and he was a Kenyan climber. His name was Joshua. He and his Sherpa couldn't make it back. So that's what happened. And during that time, we crossed one more person actually who couldn't make it back. During that summit down, who was struggling, and because the amount of oxygen in Sherpa, when he came back to oxygen, he saw him and then he took off his clothes. Right. At the end, typically you feel that immense heat, right? It's symptoms of hypothermia and he's everything. So he felt that and then he died. So, I mean, it's a very, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, not all the time. At that altitude with lack of oxygen. So, luckily, it didn't happen to me.
Sure.
So I'll get to the question, but what I really love, a couple of things, the permeance, what you mentioned to writing, and the second two by I mean, those probably were, the app descriptions of what I have done every time I have been a challenging, trip or travel or something. But the question is more from an observation. I see see the image on the cover, right? There is a lot of sharpness, lot of lines to that image. Is that like does that tell us something about the inspiration or the theme behind the book? I mean, we see columns, we see sharp edges, very sharp lines. Is that by design or happenstance?
Um, so, it's not something which I gave a lot of thought to, but this was something that the designer of the cover basically asked me about what is the impact that you want over the cover. And now when you talk about it, I'm actually realizing that some of the things that I've told is actually incorporated here. So thanks for the observation, but it was not something that I have designed myself. But this entire idea of climbing up the mountain without knowing what's in store, where you don't see much beyond a few steps, whether you're mountaineering or even trekking, is something that was in the brief for the design. And the design, I mean, when you see someone who's on the mountain and then you see these blurred lines of what he's not able to see. That was something in the brief, but now that you tell me, I didn't actually look at it that way. So, thanks for.
Can you hear me? My question is for you that you said that all these short stories are based on different characters, and most of them you probably read or heard of. And you said that the last two treks you get going to look for characters and good for rustic travel. But yeah, what I wanted to know is that and I think part of previous books is like after a road trip, the kind of different characters you met and things like that.
Yeah.
So do you allow that process to happen naturally, or do you actively look for characters and you feel that okay, you are somebody who's so and so, and I can turn that into
I don't actively look for them. I mean, I can't. I can't manufacture stuff, right? I mean, of course, a lot of fiction is manufactured, but the starting point is not something that I try to manufacture. A lot of times, it's just something which strikes me just because of the observation of different characters. So it has got to be interesting enough, and it has got to be something which has depth, which can constitute a story. I mean, you can't just have a character which goes about a trek every day, has his lunch, has his dinner, goes to the tent and sleeps. You observe that all the time. There's no story there. So, just to answer your question directly, I don't actively look for everyone, okay, this can be a character, that can be a character. It generally happens out of, if somebody is interesting, I note it, and there have been days where there's no interesting character, and then I just come back. That's it.
And to add to that, for example, travel is that especially before I started traveling really actively, this level, I used to have a corporate job and just be there. So I used to meet the same kind of people day in, day out, right? Same profile, all that, right? And once you go out, you meet, like he said, like the total you meet, woman, or you meet a couple, or fighting, or different kind of people, and we while traveling, of course. And what trek does to you, it adds to that discomfort, that situation where you are really out of the comfort zone. So, you have certain characters, and even if that character is a normal, unassuming, simple kind of guy, the real character in the model comes out when you are, thrust in that situation. So I think it gives the real mix of situation, conflicts, and the characteristic of the person.
And as you said, the travel, I think you were referring to the road trip of the Bend in the Road, right? The Bend in the Road had actually many more interesting characters in the sense that you went to places where royalty, right? For example, you met ex princess and we went to Arunachal Pradesh where we met a monk who was completely different. I mean, that's not something that you find in a monk, for example. And there's a story in Bengaluru called the monk who wasn't, which is inspired by that. No?
The rockstar.
Yeah, the rockstar. Yeah. So there are a lot of these travelers, you said, it does, but poor travelers are not generally a very interesting material for writing stories. It generally happens when you're traveling. Like there's guides, there's porters, there's local shepherds, for example, or just the people who are working in the tea houses where you're staying. Those are different people who, if I don't find anything interesting, I just say.
Yeah. Okay, so then, thank you so much for being part of it. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to all of us. So before we part, there is a hamper there that has the book, right? So for each one of you, and it has a fridge magnet and bookmarks. So what you can also do is you can take the book and get it signed by you or Ranjit, because they say, when you get a book like that, it's, or a shake hand, it's handwriting, so you can keep it for personal. Thank you so much. So it's all there. Maybe you can pick it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.